Relax. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Welcome to Pillow Talk Radio, the most delicious place to be. On this podcast, we explore how to create more connection, possibility, romance, and magic in love and in life. I'm your host and relationship specialist, Cora Boyd. Are you with me? All right, folks, today we have a special guest. My friend Vic is here, and we're going to talk about a handful of things, but I would love, Vic, for you to just introduce yourself however you would like to be known.
Sure. What's up, everybody? My name is Vic Chopra. Like Cora said, she is a friend of mine. I'm here from the Seattle area, and I'm currently the co-founder and director of Unincarcerated Productions, and I'm also a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community.
Wonderful. So Vic and I, we've danced around a lot of different themes in our conversation, but what we've come back to and what we really want to focus on today is the various ways that we put ourselves in boxes and then liberate ourselves from those boxes, both literally and figuratively, and also navigating dating with things about us that might be deemed stigmas. So we've talked a bit about that. So I'd love for you to share just like how you relate to what I just said.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think it's like, where do I begin?
Where to begin?
Where do I begin? I think, so we'll start with most recently. I was actually incarcerated for 5 years, and I was released in January of 2018. Obviously, there's a whole backstory about that we could dive into, but I'm just going to start from there. So this was pending from an addiction that me and my ex-boyfriend delved into when this was starting about 2010, 2011. So it's this long, dark journey of addiction, led to a criminal life for a short amount of time, and then, leading to a 5-year prison sentence. But the great thing about it was it actually gave me a chance to completely rebuild myself, mind, body, and soul. I was pretty much a shell when I went in. And March 28th, 2013 was my arrest date, and my clean and sober date is March 29th, 2013. So I just celebrated 7 years of sobriety.
Yay!
And using that opportunity, I physically rebuilt myself. I put on about 30 pounds of muscle and am just 100% dedicated to fitness. It's kind of my therapy and my program that I do to stay sober. And I'm actively involved in the CrossFit community here locally. I was released in January of 2018, and, I'd come from this really codependent, co-addictive, and also had turned abusive relationship. And he was actually like my first real serious relationship of my life. Like, I came out when I was 24, and I literally met him the next year and just delved into this relationship. So didn't have the best track record, when it comes to dating, because we had met online, and I just looked way different back then. I had way less self-confidence. I was like just a scrawny little twink, I guess you could say, this little brown Twinkie boy, and I come out and I'm, definitely way more confident in myself. But it's like, it's a really interesting topic to talk about on a first date. It's like, oh, so what have you been up to? Or, and it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I just got out of prison.
Yeah.
So that can bring up all of these thoughts and ideas and judgments and prejudices and whatnot, right? Stigmas, as we say. So it's been really interesting kind of navigating the dating world post-prison, because I'm an open book. So I usually, if the vibe is right with the person, I will just bring it up, because honestly, it has a lot to do with who I am, and actually with my work too, with my production company and the productions that we're trying to put out there, which are to change the stigma towards the formerly incarcerated.
Yeah.
So having this sort of like monkey on your back, I guess you could say, I will admit, like, I don't think I'm very, very good at dating. So, I've done the apps and everything. So it's always like this, oh, well, when am I going to bring that up? Right. When am I going to have this conversation with them? So it's been interesting. I will say that overall, in person anyway, they could think different thoughts after the fact or after they meet me. Overall, I've had a really positive, reaction to bringing that part of myself up, because I have changed myself for the better so much, and I have transformed into what I think is the best version of
Yeah.
myself.
I'm so curious. I would love to hear a little bit about what that process was like internally, because you're someone who you just ooze intention. You just feel so purposeful. What was that like internally to make those kinds of shifts within yourself?
I mean, it was a long, drawn out process, right? And I mean, I always say transformation is a journey, it's not a destination. So it's
Yeah.
something that I continuously work on with myself. I had a good childhood. I was an honor student growing up. I went straight to UW, got my bachelor's in econ, and then went straight into a career in media and television and radio here in
Yeah.
Seattle. So I took this like roundabout way, I guess you could say, to falling into, addiction or whatever. I mean, I partied in high school and college, but it was definitely a big like left turn in my life. So,
Yeah.
to have that realization when I got sober, incarcerated, like having that fog lift, it was like, wow, I've fallen so far. But I decided, it was probably 2-3 months into being in jail and waiting for my charges to get finalized and blah, blah, blah. So it's just like in the beginning part of that. And the fog of my addiction had lifted and I was 100% sober. I just had this realization that I was like, I am not going to let this be the final chapter of my story. Like, I'm not going to let my friends and those who knew me say, oh yeah, did you hear about Vic? Yeah, that's a really tragic story. I wanted it to be the midpoint. And I was like, I'm going to take the reins of my story as the author, pick up that pen and write the rest of this story. And this is going to be a story of redemption and triumph, not a tragedy. It started from that point on. And it was like little things of finally making just the decision that, okay, I'm an addict and I need to be 100% sober. I get to work on my body. I get to start meditating. I get to start really practicing mindfulness and really not only taking the reins of my story, but my life as a whole, because I think I was just sort of this bystander in my previous life. Everything was just happening to me and around me, and success came very fast. And I just don't think I appreciated it in that previous life. So it's taking moments for gratitude, especially majorly 100% is gratitude for just where I'm at, all the beautiful things that I have in my life. I think starting from that point and then moving forward from there.
Yeah. I'm wondering, just like to be in your mind, how I'm also just curious about how different people envision time and various lives, because I've moved a lot. They're almost different segments. Do you think of it as a previous life?
Yes
Yeah.
and no, but yeah, I really do refer to it. It's like pre-incarceration, post-incarceration, because Cora, if you knew me in my previous life, like I don't think you would recognize me. Or I mean, I'm still the same Vic as far as like my personality, and
Yeah.
I'm super friendly and I'm total extrovert.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was a mess, like
Yeah.
I partied all the time, drank, I smoked like a chimney, was a functional stoner, probably like 120 pounds. Right now I'm 155. I think I just held myself differently. Yeah, I really, really do, because I look at that guy and there was a time I had a lot of pity for him, but now it's just more like, I just send him love and just look at him and like, okay, kid, like you got a lot to learn, but you're going to come out of this even better than you ever could have imagined.
Yeah. You know what I just realized as we've been talking? I was trying to clarify like what my exact intention in inviting you on the podcast, because like there's so many different things that I am so curious about and want to talk to you about, and we're going to talk
Yeah.
about all of them, and we're just going to let it be conversation. But I just realized, I'm like, oh, this is totally me positioning a thirst trap for you. So cool. You're so cool. And there's so many things to talk about. And I'm like, I want to have this conversation and let's just make it public so that it can be a thirst trap and that people, oh my God, who is that?
Sure. I mean, hey, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
a
all for
podcast
it.
thirst trap. Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Let's do it. We're gonna
Yeah.
make it a thing. Yeah,
Let's
that's
make it a
totally.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things I want to ask you about. And I'm curious, as someone who, as you know, like I quit drinking definitively 6 months ago. And
I'm
then like,
so proud of you for that, by the way. Yeah,
thank
that's awesome.
yeah, and it's been kind of like a longer process in the making. I've been like playing with it for like a year and a half, but I'm curious if you can share a bit about just like your internal process with sobriety and speaking to new layers of even knowing yourself and kind of unincarcerating yourself from addiction. What has that been like?
Oh man. So I think when I first was starting to come to terms with my addiction, I did a lot of just going back into my history, right? Like, where did it all begin? And I really uncovered this moment when I was struggling with my sexuality when I was 14, 15 years old, right? Like I knew that I had feelings for men like at a very, very young age, but I didn't really know what it meant. And then I got more mature and did some exploring online, right? Because that's what you did. That's, I think, what a lot of people do, or a lot of gay kids do. And then I had my first sexual experience with a guy when I was 15. And it was like this just anonymous hookup that became a pattern. I spiraled into such a depression after that because I was in such denial, because I didn't come out till I was 24, right? So it was about a decade of just really unhealthy thought patterns and beliefs
Yeah.
about myself. So that was kind of the start of my addictive patterns. You know, it's funny, I can literally trace it back to like 2 months after that experience. I smoked a cigarette for the first time. I smoked weed for the first time. I got drunk for the first time. So I think in the beginning and all throughout high school and college, it was like I was self-medicating, right? Because I couldn't deal with what was going on in my head. And I think that then set the precedent and patterns to then turn into a full-blown addiction when it came to opiates and meth. So it was Oxycontin, heroin, and meth. That was what took me down and my ex-boyfriend down at that time in our lives. So I can literally trace it back to that. So it's been a long journey of self-medicating and then just numbing myself, right? I mean, I was able to maintain in high school, college, and in my early to mid 20s, had a career, job, graduated college, everything. So when you're dealing with years and years of repression, because even after I came out when I was 24, it was this huge weight that was lifted off of me, but I already instilled in myself those patterns of partying, and it was how I dealt with life. So to get sober in jail and then prison and have that sobriety journey start there, I mean, you have a lot of time to sit and think by yourself, a lot. So I'm grateful that I had a workout routine that I had started, and I started meditating and really practicing mindfulness. And then I started doing yoga, and it was all those things of like little victories and small little victories, I would call them, with gaining strength or having a great meditative experience. And so having those things to cling on to as like healthy coping mechanisms really helped me find that journey of sobriety and continue it to this day. But there's so many layers you uncover of like, wow, that's how I really was in that relationship, or in this instance, oh my God, I was doing this, or I could have done that better. So it just comes with time. And at first you could feel a lot of guilt and shame. And that's what I dealt with for the first few years of my incarceration, was so much guilt and shame for how many bridges I burned and how I treated my friends and family. It's like those stages of grief, right? And then I finally just accepted it and was like, okay, like I did that, but that's not the person that I am now. And then I was able to kind of make peace with that. And it's still a process. It's still a journey for me, that I feel that I've come out on the other side of the incarceration experience stronger to then deal with life now, right? And to deal with everything life throws at you. Because when you're incarcerated, life moves at about like 20%. And then you get back into the real world, and it's like full speed, 100%,
I've been curious about that, especially, like how time moves differently. So it feels like it moves slower.
It totally does, because you're waiting for your release date. So it's like you have this point of time in the future that you're moving towards your release date, freedom, right? So that's always hanging over your head. And then you just don't have a lot to think about or deal with, or I didn't anyway. I guess in higher custodies, I was in minimum security work camp in Walla Walla at the Washington State Penitentiary. So, it wasn't super violent. So I was very lucky about that. I had a job and I just worked out, and everything's done for you. Like you literally every Saturday, you go pick up your bed sheets and your linen, you put your laundry in a big basket in the day room, and your laundry gets done for you, and then it gets dropped off for you. You never have a choice about food. I mean, you can buy commissary and stuff, but like the regular meals are just, you go to, we call it mainline, which is like breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You go to mainline, you go to the chow hall, you get your food, that it's all prepped for you, and that's it. It's like, so there's not a lot of choice, right? So you just don't have a lot to really plan or worry about. So that's why I got hyper focused on my workout routine and different, writing. I wrote a screenplay, like different things like that. You call it programming. You like write a program for yourself, or you take classes. So when you program, that helps the time go by faster, but it doesn't prepare you for how fast life moves when you get out. So it's just like, you're kind of like going do, 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 do. And then it just, you get out and it's like, boom.
Dubstep remix.
Yeah. Wicka, like just boom. It's like the drop, right? And it's just like jump in, or like, it's like sink or swim. So
what was that like?
It was kind of crazy. So for me, the last 6 months of my sentence, I got to come back to Seattle and live in a work release center. So there's two in downtown. And when you're at work release, it's like a halfway house, but you're still technically incarcerated. So I mean, you're monitored heavily, but there's a lot more freedoms. Like you can get a real job. So you go out on passes every day, you go to work, you can see your family and friends more frequently. So it's like a graduated process to get back to freedom, right?
Mhm.
So I got back to Reynolds work release here in Seattle. It's on 4th. And I got a job at Piatti in New Village, just hosting and busing. But it was great because it was a great social atmosphere.
Mhm.
Lots of like young kind of hip people that I, a few I still talk to and I'm friends with. So it was a great, like, I got to be around people and see people and bus, and it was just a great environment. Honestly, I was really lucky because I had a network of people like that. That job came to me from a referral from one of my best friends, right, who
Yeah.
used to work there. But like, you have to figure out the bus schedule on your own. You don't have internet. You don't have a cell phone. You don't have any of that, right? So
Yeah.
it's like living analog in a digital world, I would
Yeah.
call it.
That's
Yeah,
what I
because
was thinking. And when I came and visited the prison with Rachel, and we were workshopping business ideas, and I was talking about that with some of the guys, and that was something that it was interesting for me to conceptualize of like, you haven't been on the internet for years, like what, and then
yeah,
you're like thrown, and then like things have advanced, or like lots of shit has happened, or like even plugging into, and like as an entrepreneurial person too, the landscape of different industries. Is it intimidating? Is it exciting? Like what was that experience like to be offline?
yeah. I mean, it was definitely FOMO, right? So
Yeah.
I was lucky that I was incarcerated in 2013. So like I had iPads and
Yeah.
iPhones and Samsung Galaxy, tablets and phones. So I had been exposed to all of that. You know what I mean? So I did time with guys that like didn't know what Facebook was, or
Mhm.
or had never used Facebook, or had never had a smartphone. It was just a lot of FOMO for me. But like when I got out, there was still a learning curve. I was like, what are stories? What's Snapchat? Like what do you do on
Yeah.
Snapchat? And I had to like learn how to do social media stories, because I was always big on social media. So there was a learning curve there,
Yeah.
which I think I've definitely finally gotten way better at, and I think I'm pretty good. But
Mhm.
that was intimidating, and
Yeah.
then yeah, I mean, just so many apps and stuff that I like. When I first heard of Uber, I was like, what's Uber? When I was
Mhm.
inside. And then when I got out, I was like, oh, there's like Uber and Lyft, and it's like a cab thing, but not. But yeah, you know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
like these little things that I wasn't exposed to that all started when I was incarcerated. So yeah, there was a bit of a learning curve, and sometimes it was daunting, but I got the hang of it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I went to Waldorf school, and so like I didn't have as much technology as a kid. And like the thing with technology is like they design it to be easy to learn. So
Yeah.
yeah, you pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely helped some of my friends that, one of my best friends, he did 23 years, and he
Yeah.
was released last year. So like, he fell in 1996. So, helping him, with his first smartphone, and helping him get his email set up, and, describing what different apps do or whatever. He's still pretty minimal on it because he's like totally Buddhist, but it's just kind of like, wow, you've been away for that many years. There's so much to catch up on. It's kind of daunting at first, because even for me, being away for 5 years, I'm still catching up on movies that
Yeah.
I haven't seen, or like binging TV shows that I know. Like I just finished Game of Thrones finally, and it was like, I feel so sad that I was not part of that train of being a total fanboy, because I literally am like, that was the best television show I've ever seen in my entire life. I literally
Yeah.
just binged Game of Thrones over the course of like 3 weeks. I was like, nope,
Yeah.
and it was like amazing. But like I literally just did that in 2020, and it just ended last year. So there's
Mhm.
like things like that, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like texting my friends I don't know if seen it. I'm like, oh my God, the wildlings just attacked Castle Black, or oh my God, like this is so
Yeah.
amazing. And they're all like, yeah, well, you're kind of late to the party. I'm like, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I was away for 5 years. What's your excuse? So
Yeah. Yeah. What were you up to?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What do you feel are like some of the funniest, most off base assumptions that people make about both addicts and formerly incarcerated people?
I think overall people hear that term and they automatically get this image in their head, or this nomenclature that you're just like a
Yeah.
dirtbag, right? That you're
Mhm.
scum, you deserve to go to prison, or you're a criminal, or blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So one of my best friends, she was my best friend for over 20 years, and we don't speak anymore because of our distance from the whole situation, which was shocking to me. But she had a friend who was one of my other best friend's coworkers, right? And they kind of realized that in a conversation. And my current best friend was talking to her, and she was like, she had mentioned my name, and this other person was like, oh, Vic, is that the guy that went to jail?
Mm.
Just and she's like, yeah. And she goes, oh, well, I hope he's learned his lesson. Just things like that. And
Yeah.
my friend Michelle was like, that's never something I would ever say to him. That's his journey. And so people have these assumptions like, oh, I hope you learned your lesson.
The label gives people license to just categorize or like patronize in a really automatic, dehumanizing way.
100%
Yeah.
dehumanizing there's so
Yeah.
much dehumanizing language when it comes to the incarcerated and the formerly incarcerated. A lot of people like to put that label that you are like subhuman, and that's what we're really working hard to change with Unincarcerated Productions. And I'll admit, I had those same biases and stigmas before I found myself embroiled in the criminal justice system. I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly admit that I had my own biases. So that's why it's so important for me to do this work and to help shift that narrative, because there are so many amazing people that have this background, right, but have
Yeah.
completely turned their lives around and
Mm-hmm.
are really kicking ass in life. And of all the incarcerated population, there's a stat that says about 90% will be coming home at some point, will be coming home, a lot of them soon.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather have a system that's set up to help them succeed? Because they're going to be your neighbors, right? So wouldn't you rather give them the tools to rebuild a life rather than constantly punishing them and then causing them to go back out and reoffend? The system is rigged, and it's rigged not in our favor. So you have to try extra hard. And if you don't have a support system, of course, if somebody's been involved in criminal activity all their life,
Mm-hmm.
that's the easiest thing that they know. So
Yeah.
of course they're going to go back to it. I'm involved with a couple of organizations, one that you volunteered with the Five
Yeah.
Ventures, to actually go inside and to teach the currently incarcerated life skills, entrepreneurial skills, to show them that there's another way,
Yeah.
and to help end that cycle of what we call recidivism, which is like somebody's propensity to reoffend and go back to prison.
Yeah. How do you feel about, I even just used it like the label addict. In some of the books that I've been reading about addiction, I'm hearing just different schools of thought around that. I've seen or kind of like picked up on that it can be really helpful to call it what it is, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
also that it really puts a lot of blame on the individual rather than acknowledging like these are like highly addictive substances that like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a like fault of the individual.
I kind of go back and forth on it. There's a dichotomy even with my viewpoint on that, because one, I had to come to terms with that fact and I own it. It's like, I'm an addict. I was addicted to substances that ultimately, I wouldn't say ruined my life, but I lost everything because of it and had to come
Yeah.
back from that. In certain regards, this is like call a spade, right? But at the same time, I do think there can be issues with that quote unquote label, because there is so much more that goes into addiction that I think people don't realize. I take responsibility for my actions and my mistakes, and I chose to try those substances, and you know what I mean? Even with whatever was going on in my mind. But there's so many extenuating circumstances for everybody's journey. And my sobriety is a constant thing. It's once again, it's a journey. It's not a destination, because I never want to say, oh yeah, I'm good. I think that's a slippery slope there. Yeah. So I go back and forth on it. I own it. I'm like, yeah, I'm an addict. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, well, we go back and forth,
Yeah.
even on the term like ex-con or felon,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
convict. We like to say, I mean, in certain regards, again, it's like if somebody calls me a felon, it's like, well, I am. I did commit felonies,
Yeah.
but we like to say, like prisoner, former prisoner, but now we're
Yeah.
coining this term, the unincarcerated,
Yeah.
which is to be liberated from imprisonment in its many forms. Everybody's in prison. Everybody
Yeah.
can be in their own type of prison. It doesn't actually have to be a physical prison.
Yeah. That is the fucking truth. Say that again. For anyone who hasn't had the experience of coming out, can you describe that experience of just like coming to that truth within yourself, how that felt to just be like, whoa, new layer unlocked,
Right?
motherfuckers? Like,
Yeah.
what did that feel like?
I mean, it was amazing because, yeah,
Yeah.
before I was actually physically incarcerated, I was a prisoner of my own mind and
Right.
denial and being in this closet,
Yeah.
quote unquote, right? I had been suffering in denial because I had this, the realization probably when I was about 14, 15,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't come out till I was 24. So it was a decade of just toxic thoughts. And, I definitely thought about suicide a lot, like a
Yeah.
lot. I probably every day at some point. I literally just hated myself because I didn't see any way that this could be okay. And it was partly due to myself, but also partly due to the conditioning of the environment that we are all raised in this world,
Right.
right? Nowadays, you see it a lot more, thank goodness, and it's beautiful. But even back then in the mid to late 90s, there was very few gay characters or even just gay personalities in the public eye that were healthy, that were successful, that
Yeah.
really were inspiring, right? So it took a while. I mean, when Ellen came out in 96, that was amazing. April 14th and 30th, 1997. One was Time magazine cover. What was the puppy episode of her sitcom? So I was in such denial, but I wanted to explore my sexuality. So I got into this habit of really, I wouldn't say dangerous, but yeah, like dangerous anonymous sexual encounters, right? For years, because I didn't tell anybody about them. And it was like a one and done, just with total strangers. Luckily, nothing bad happened throughout those years. But when I was 24, I had just had another hookup. I tried to do the dating girls thing. I even like hooked up with a girl in college and gave her oral sex because I was not, nothing was happening down there. Like, it would have been so much easier, but she definitely enjoyed it, actually. So I got the job done, which is great, but it was nice. Like, I was like, oh, she's soft and she was pretty. And I think women are beautiful, but it just was not for me. Like, I literally dove in head first to try, and nothing happened.
All about.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, because I'm saying I'm straight, so I should probably.
Is there really any other way to eat pussy than head first?
Than head first, exactly. So yeah, I tried to do the dating girls thing, and obviously it wasn't working. So when I was 24, I was like, I just had another hookup and got around to testing at the doctor and got a clean bill of health. And I was just like, this is stressing me out too much. This is too unhealthy. This is just not good. So I came up with this idea. I was like, well, maybe I can just find like a fuck buddy, right? One guy that I just hook up with and blah, blah, blah. And then that sort of evolved from even there. So I met this guy online and we kind of hit it off, and I started to kind of like him and have feelings for him, which was totally new because I was allowing myself to go down that path.
Yeah.
Because I never had before. There were a couple of guys I had kind of messed around with in my early 20s as well that I thought were cool, but it was just like, no, this is just, there's no emotion behind this. It's just sex and blah, blah, blah. Right part of my brain's like, no, that's not possible.
Yeah.
So I started to have feelings for this guy. And then I talked about it in my coming out video that you watched. Like, I literally went and saw Brokeback Mountain, and it just, everything, like my evolution of my train of thought regarding my sexuality at that point led up to that movie. And when I watched that movie, it was just like, it kind of just opened my eyes to the idea of, oh, you can have sex and love. It's like, no, I'm not like bisexual or straight. No, I'm just fucking gay. Right? Like, I'm gay, and I'm like, that's awesome. And I don't want to have this tragic story in my future. I want something different. And I literally came out to my best friend the next day. And then I went on this like 2-week personal gay pride parade and told everybody I knew except for my mom. That happened a year later, but I told all my friends, and it was just this huge fucking weight. Like, I just took a deep breath and just let it out, and was like, I can let all that shit go now, all these years and years of this weight on my shoulders and this constant self-doubt and guessing, or did I act gay, or does that person think I'm gay, or am I putting off too much gayness, or did I turn my wrist down too much, or did all that bullshit, like that being in denial puts in your head. You don't need to go through any of that, because it's like, just
I'm
like,
gay.
I'm just I'm
a
gay.
felon. I'm
gay. Exactly. Like, I'm exactly. Just own it. And that's so that it's like I came out of that closet, and then it's like when I was released from prison, I didn't hide it. I was like, I just did 5 years in prison, you guys. This is where I've been. Like, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to have shame around it. This is who I am. And I've learned from it, and I've grown, and I'm the best fucking version of myself. Like, just when I was like, I'm gay, and I love that part about myself. And same thing with coming out of prison too. So I sort of have 2 of these prisons that I've come out of in my life.
Yeah, I'm thinking with Brokeback Mountain, I feel like that was really the first big media representation of gay romance. You're probably not the only person who had that response when it came to theaters. Hugely liberating for so many people.
I would hope so, and I would think so, right? When Ellen came out in 97, a lot of people came out at that point too.
Yeah.
I was just so young at that point, but I've heard lots of stories of people doing that. I would think Brokeback had the same effect because there had been gay love stories and gay romances on screen. I mean, you had movies like Jeffrey but they never like hit the mainstream.
How do you feel about the fact that they're both straight actors?
I'm all about representation. So looking back on it, it would have been nice I don't think that we should take roles away from people just because they're like gay roles, just because they're straight. I don't want to get into this whole cancel culture thing, but I think there is a lot of straight washing when it comes to casting. And even like when it comes to even trans people now, a lot of trans roles are filled by
Right.
cisgender.
Yeah. I just watched Disclosure, and why is it that like society is like, oh, this is palatable if
it's
when the cameras are gone, they're back to being cis straight men.
Yeah, it was funny too, because they talked about how that also causes a lot of prejudice amongst the straight community because they don't take trans people seriously because they think a trans woman's still a man. You know what I mean?
It's still
Like
playing a part.
it's still playing a part when actually it's like, no, trans women, trans men are women. A trans woman is a woman. A trans man is a man. And that separates that like viewpoint of the community, and it's really fucked up. And I never even thought about it that way till I watched Disclosure, and I just think Laverne Cox is amazing. So and there was a learning curve for me when it came to the trans community as well. I've done a lot of just educating myself on the trans community. I was a total neophyte when it came to all of that, to that whole culture and to them being part of my community. And so I wanted to make sure that I was empowered enough to support them and to just accept them 100% and fully.
Yeah. You just used a word I don't know. Neophyte?
Neophyte. Yeah. It just means like an amateur or like somebody that's not really schooled in a train of thought.
Like a novice?
Novice or beginner.
Oh, okay, cool. Add that to the repertoire.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit too about your dancing and choreography. We're really going to just lay out all the many dimensions of you for this.
Yeah. I mean, I always loved hip hop, and I, used to do it a lot as a teenager. I did dances in school, took hip hop classes through Westlake Dance Center, which is still the studio that I go to at the height of my addiction, but still trying to live life and do things. I'd been laid off from KEXP, which is a radio station here in town. And then I got representation with Tiffany Talent because I act and stuff. So right now I'm represented by All About You Talent. But back then I had an agent working for my talent agent. I was representing a female rapper who used to be signed under Trina. And then I came up with this idea to do like a flash mob for Lady Gaga, right? Because the Lady Gaga concert was coming to Tacoma. So I put together a flash mob for that. And that was really fun. And I worked with a couple of choreographers and just kind of put the whole thing together. And it was great. It could have been a lot better, but I really appreciated all the dancers that came and volunteered and put their time in. And I think it has like 350,000 hits on YouTube, which is
That's
cool.
awesome.
So when I got out, I was just like, I need to bring dance back into my life. So I just started taking classes at Westlake again. My friend Juliana, she was my teacher. And now she's one of my best friends. Her style is just amazing. And then from that to my one of my best friends, Michelle, we've been friends for 30 years. We started going to class together. And then she's the producer for 4 state pageants for Miss USA. So it's done through Pageants Northwest, which is run by Maureen Francisco and David Van Maren, who are amazing, beautiful human beings. Michelle used to be the choreographer, and then she became choreographer producer. And she was like, hey, would you want to come help me and be my assistant producer choreographer? So me, myself, and our friend Laura. So yeah, I helped be an assistant producer and choreographer for Miss Washington, Miss Oregon, Miss Montana, and Miss Idaho, which was really fun. And yeah, and then Michelle and I actually got to go down and choreograph the Miss World America pageant in Vegas too, which was really, really fun at the Orleans. So, and LaToya Jackson was one of the judges. So just like, everyone's like, oh, woohoo, LaToya Jackson's going to be there. But it was so fun though. It was crazy, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Do you ever just think about with yourself? I do this sometimes where like the different settings that you've traversed and you're like, whoa, I'm here, I'm over here. And you're like, you're just with yourself the whole time.
Yeah.
Different environments. Yeah.
I know.
We're here in Las Vegas.
Life is fun, like even during COVID, I've had good days and bad days, but I try and just be grateful and just be like, okay, like this is where I am right now. So I'm going to make the best of it. Sometimes I think about it, or when I am talking to people, or, I went on a hike yesterday with my friend, and I was talking about when I went backpacking through Europe after college, and she was just like, wow, like that's so cool, because she hadn't really done a lot of traveling. And I'm like, I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was cool.
That was
like, wow.
Cool.
Like, wow. Yeah. I literally backpacked for 2 months across Europe. Wow. It's pretty crazy. Just like, it's pretty crazy. I went to prison, like it's really,
right. It's just like another crazy thing I did.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, that Vic, he's just living his crazy life,
I love thinking of it that in that way because that's what it is. It's just an experience. It's just an experience you had, and just like any of these other experiences. So, what are you excited about right now? Where are you directing your mana? What are you daydreaming about?
I right now am daydreaming about, well, I daydream about love. I do.
Mm.
Yeah, I really want to find, and I'm just a fucking romantic. I am. Like, even though I've been on a hiatus from dating and I'm not on any apps anymore. I'm really not actively trying to talk to anybody because I really want to manifest something beautiful in like what I want in a relationship and the guy that I want, right?
Let's do it right now. Let's just in
Yeah,
case he happens to be listening or someone
you,
who knows this person. Well,
like I just want to find a boy that's into
yeah.
CrossFit and that will watch Harry Potter and listen to Britney Spears with me. you know,
Is that
like,
so much to
is
ask
that
for?
so much to ask
No,
for, right? Like
I
we can
trust that
go do
there are
CrossFit.
many people who would be excited to do that with you.
I hope so. But yeah, I just dating apps and like conversations on there just get so asinine and stupid. That's harsh. It's a little harsh, but I have met some cool people on apps, but it just goes nowhere. And I really do want to manifest that meet cute in real life. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I want that cheesy romantic comedy moment where we just meet at the grocery store, right? Because that's what everybody wants to meet
Trader
their
Joe's. Let's
yeah,
go.
like we both reach for, the same bag of kale or something, or,
And
or
you're like,
like,
are you on your way to CrossFit? And are you
yeah,
listening to Brittany in your airplane?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I,
because I am, right? So yeah, that's what I'm focused on. And whether
yeah,
it's here, I am going to move to LA. So that's definitely in the cards. COVID kind of put a pause on that, but I'm daydreaming about making that move
mm,
and finding love, and then also taking Unincarcerated Productions to the next level. And we're at a really exciting point for that with our team and looking at investors and getting equipment, and I'm putting together treatments for 2 series and my feature-length documentary. So it's a really exciting time for Unincarcerated as well. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm daydreaming about just life in general, and yeah, move and love and fun productions and all the good stuff.
What's so inspiring about you is just your personal ownership, and like I can just tell how streamlined your energy is, even in your decision around dating apps. It's just like, let me go put my life force energy towards all of these things that I'm really excited about. What advice do you have to anyone who's listening who may be hiding in some way in their life or may feel like they're draining their energy into shame? What advice do you have for streamlining your energy and just like owning your shit? Because you're so good at that.
So I think first off, just give yourself a fucking break, man. Like
Hmm.
just take a deep breath and just show yourself some grace and compassion and just forgive yourself for anything that you're holding on to and just let it fucking go. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's not that serious. And then take a moment or several moments or however long you need, because it's actually gonna be a while, and work on loving yourself, because self-love is so important. I used to just hate myself. I couldn't look in the mirror and say I love you. And that was a big thing for me. My friend actually challenged me to do it when I was in prison. He was like, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and say I love you, and I mean it. I couldn't do it for months. I would break down. I couldn't do it. So just working on self-love, and that's, it's so easy to say because it's so difficult, but to start that process, like to figure out things that you love about yourself, like just letting it go, and then finding purpose, finding passion, however that shows up in your life, taking that step. I did this emotional intelligence training out in Ohio. It's called Next Level, and we had this saying. It was, oh, what the fuck, go for it anyway, right? So
Yeah,
we would literally say it. We say, oh, what the fuck, go for it anyway. Oh, what the fuck, go for it anyway, right? And that's just
I
like,
love that.
and it's literally like, oh, just try it. Try something new. Take a leap. I was scared shitless when I started working out. I literally was going in prison with these big freaking muscular like dudes that were like 5 times as big as me, right? That were just looking at me like, who the fuck is this scrawny little gay dude, brown gay dude, right? Like coming on here. But I was the most dedicated. I was there every fucking day with my book and my journal, and I was like writing all my workouts down, and just I was driven in that, and that earned respect. But it
Yeah.
was so scary, but I took the leap because it's what I wanted. So find what you want to do. Give yourself some grace and compassion. Work on loving yourself and finding out what you really, really want to do, and just go for it. And also I would say my last one would just be gratitude, right? Because we get in this state of mind of lack. You attract the energy that you put out and where you are in your state of mind. Like what's internal becomes external. It's truly a freaking fact. You know, you've heard it said so many times in different ways, like that secret or, you know, but it's the law of attraction. It's true, right? It's not super like commercial, like the secret makes it out to be, but like if you live in a state of gratitude, you are setting up yourself to receive because you are already
you appreciate
what exactly like if you're living in a state of lack, then that's all you're ever going to get because nothing will ever be good enough for you, right? But if you're like, man, I have so much, I have a roof over my head, I have water, I have food, I have friends. It was those little things that I took for granted. And when I went away for 5 years, so much of that was stripped away from me. It made me realize how much the little things matter. And if you can just start your day from a state of gratitude, I'm telling you, like it will completely change your life.
Yes. Well, thank you on that note. Thank you so much for coming. You're so cool. It was wonderful for me to get to hear more about you too. And
you were so cool. I'm so happy we met. I'm just like, that's my badass friend, Cora. Like I'm so excited to not only be your friend, but like work with you. And I think we have some exciting stuff that we can do. So that's for another conversation, everybody.
Another conversation. We'll just tease that, just whet their appetites a little bit.
No, thank you so much for inviting me on. This was so much fun. I just love you. You're fabulous.
Fuck yeah. So where can anyone find you if they want to look at your work or slide into your DMs, whatever the case might be?
So we'll start with my Instagram, and it's at Vic Chopra. That's VIKCHOPRA, like Priyanka Chopra. Like I'm an honorary Jonas. But it's at Vic with a K, VIK Chopra. And then you can follow Unincarcerated Productions literally on Instagram at Unincarcerated Productions. So that's Incarcerated, Unincarcerated Productions with an S. And you can find us on Facebook too. Online, we're at unincarcerated.com. And then you can find us on YouTube as well. So we've released 6 episodes of a series we call The Incarceration of America that we actually just put together during COVID. So it was all just done through Zoom. It was a little ingenious idea that my partner Rachel Check had. So we're really proud of that. And then there'll be more to come, but that's just Unincarcerated Productions on YouTube as well.
Awesome. I'll talk to you soon. Let's go dance.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pillow Talk Radio. I'm Cora Boyd, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep you in the loop. In the interim, you can find me on Instagram at @TheCoraBoyd, YouTube Cora Boyd, website CoraBoydCoaching.com. Have an excellent rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week.